through the acid trash jamboree, the home of weird and wild music and cinema. And yeah, funnily enough, today these two worlds will collide as we take a look at Freakscene, the story of Dinosaur Jr. This is a 2020 documentary directed by German filmmaker and longtime Dino fan Philipp Reichenheim, known professionally as Philipp Virus, and issued as a handsome Region A Blu-ray by the Utopia Company. I'm sure most of you watching will be at least partially familiar with the history of this seminal US alternative act, who blended influences as diverse as raging hardcore punk, gloomy goth, yearning country rock, wigged-out war-heavy psychedelia, and dissonant ear-killing noise to great effect across 7 full lengths during their original run in the 80s and 90s, and who have somehow managed to churn out another 5 since their original core lineup reformed almost 20 years ago. Yeah, having started off in the short-lived hardcore outfit Deep Wound in the early 80s, vocalist and multi-instrumentalist J Mascis and bassist Lou Barlow joined forces with a drummer named Murph and formed Dinosaur in 1984, releasing a couple of independent LPs under this moniker before they were forced to add the Junior to the end when they were threatened with legal action by a West Coast psych supergroup called Dinosaurs. The band's problems didn't stop there though. Yeah, as is discussed at great length in the documentary, the members' already fractious relationships were pushed to breaking point during one particularly disastrous US tour, which did a lot of internal damage and ultimately led to Barlow being booted out of the band in 1989. The doc then follows Dino through their years signed to a couple of major labels, Sire and Reprise Records, during which time Murph also left the group. Then, following 1997's commercial flop, Hand It Over, Mascis decided to call it a day and form a new band. But yeah, as I said, just a few years on from this, the unthinkable happened. Somehow, the original trio ended up back on speaking terms, and they're still going strong now. So that's Freakscene in a nutshell. Hopefully I haven't spoiled too much of the plot there. As you might expect, much of the doc focuses on the band's interpersonal dynamic. As I say, moving from the hatred and dysfunction of their early years to the relative harmony of the past 2 decades. The musical side of things is mostly left to speak for itself in the form of assorted live and promo video clips, as well as snippets of Dino's classics on the soundtrack. Yeah, anyone hoping for some nerdy, classic album-styled recording session info, or perhaps a few detailed song breakdowns, may come away from the doc a little bit disappointed. Weirdly, the later we get in Dino's career, the more the albums are just kind of skipped over, it would seem. Yeah, I'm largely unfamiliar with their work since 2007's Beyond, so it would have been nice to learn a bit more about these, but we can't have it all, I suppose. On the plus side, there's a little bit of chatter regarding guitars, pedals and amps to appease all the gearheads out there. Of all the original members, it was Murph that I knew the least about prior to watching Freakscene, so it's nice that he gets so much screen time, speaking candidly about his Dino experience, whilst Barlow is his usual self, again very open and honest about all his personal trials and tribulations down the years. On the other hand, as anyone who's ever seen a J Mascis interview will attest, he's not the chattiest fellow on earth, so it won't come as much of a surprise to learn that we don't hear a great deal of his unmistakable nasal grumble during the doc. Not to worry though, as we get plenty of talking head appearances from friends and superfans like actor Matt Dillon, ex-Sonic Youths Thurston Moore and Kim Gordon, head Pixie Frank Black, the late great Mark Lanegan, and of course their biggest fanboy of all, the legend that is Henry Rollins. Notable by their absence, however, are the assorted bassists and drummers that went on to replace Lou and Murph during the 90s. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't hear a peep from any of them, which is a shame. Though apparently, during the editing process, the director decided he just wanted the film to focus on Mascis, Barlow and Murph, meaning their interviews ended up on the cutting room floor, so as not to muddy the narrative. A rather strange decision. Yeah, I'm sure just a couple of sound bites from each wouldn't have done any more harm to the movie's flow than any of the aforementioned celebrity cameos do. But like I said, we can't have it all. Anyways, whilst no one would argue that Dinosaur Jr. have had the most scintillatingly topsy-turvy or excessive rock and roll career known to man, their story is certainly one worth telling. And even if, like me, you already knew all the basics, there's still enough here to enlighten and entertain. Freakscene is also visually satisfying, with all manner of cool posters, flyers and record sleeves on display during the doc. Now, despite the fact that Freakscene was apparently compiled from hundreds of hours of footage, with the original cut lasting around 3 hours, extras on the Blu-ray are a little on the skimpy side. Yeah, aside from the usual commentary track and trailers, all we get are 10 minutes worth of bonus talking head interviews, plus a fairly interesting but frustratingly badly recorded post-premiere Q&A session featuring J Mascis and Reichenheim himself, who I might add also happens to be Mascis' brother-in-law. Personally speaking, I was a bit too young to appreciate that whole pre-grunge alt-rock explosion when it was happening in the 80s, meaning I only got into Dinosaur Jr., as well as the aforementioned likes of Sonic Youth and the Pixies, once I'd completely burnt out on the more well-known grunge bands that I'd loved in my early teens. But yeah, heavily into the likes of Neil Young, and always on the lookout for cult heroes from yesteryear to obsess over. Come the early 2000s, Dino provided the perfect soundtrack, and I still like them to this day. As for the doc, I'm sure I'll watch it again before long. And yeah, if you're a Dino obsessive and for some reason Freakscene has passed you by so far, well, I'd highly recommend picking it up post-haste. But yeah, even if you don't know or particularly care for their stuff, if you're one of those serial music documentary gobblers like me, then this is still well worth a look if you can find it on streaming. So that's it for today's video. I hope it's been interesting. I'm sure before long I'll be covering even more documentaries. If that sounds your thing, please hit subscribe to keep in the loop about future episodes, and please check out the archive for a ton more videos on cool music and cinema. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you again soon on the Acid Trash Jamboree.